than me to speak about sustainability. I'm just going to glide through very briefly and hopefully give you guys a few things to think about. So, the last time I came up to speak, for better or for worse, I was in an elevator on my way down, and some of the attendees came up to me in the elevator and they told me, well, I really like your session. It's very brutal and very honest. You know, you speak something that a lot of people may be thinking and not wording or not verbalizing it out. So fortunately or unfortunately for you, I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to focus on two things. I'm going to try and keep things very simple, very high level. If you want to talk to me afterwards, feel free to do it. Add me to your LinkedIn. So I won't go very deep down into a lot of concepts. I'm also going to be pretty brutal, especially when it comes to leadership and management. Okay, our journey today covered three basic things. We are not only going to rethink, but we're going to revisit, because a lot of times, some of the assumption of the most fundamental concept, like new, leadership, and management, I think a lot of times we've used it so often over the past 2-3 decades that probably a good time to revisit what do we mean by that. So we're going to define what it means by new. It's going to sound really weird, right? We're going to talk about leadership and management. And then we're going to touch a little bit why collaboration is so important and crucial. So I'm not an expert in language like you guys, you know. I just Google, right? Good thing, Google, see what is new. Very simply, something hasn't existed before or has been discovered for the first time. The other alternative meaning is it already exists, but it's being discovered for the first time by you. It's a very subtle but critical difference. The first one is new for everybody. The second one is new for you. Somebody else has done it. Your competitor has done it. It's very different. The risk, the methodology to do it is very different. And sustainability, believe it or not, a lot of it is new for the world. Because we've been trying to do this many, many years now. So I'm going to make some distinction, and hopefully, very simple distinction, and hopefully you guys will get what I'm talking about, what I'm trying to communicate. Just stepping back a little bit. Every time we invent something, every time we create a product or service, it usually starts with somebody having a problem. It should, right? You see somebody struggling, you see a business having challenges with Excel, maybe you think, hey, let's create a solution to help this person. You know, that's normally how we create new products and services. You go around, you see your friends, you yourself have some problems, you want to create something for the world to come and solve this specific problem. Now, normally when we start, we have a problem and we think, okay, how do we solve this problem? There are different ways to solve the same problem, right? And I'll show you some examples just now. If you think of a problem, maybe you can think of 10 different ways of solving it. You try, you test and learn something that no one has done before, and then you find out that a handful of them work, a handful of them doesn't work. And if you're in an innovation business, you know this is what we call innovation funnel. If you're in the R&D business, you also know, because this is exactly what you do in R&D as well. You do experiments, you start with hundreds, thousands of experiments, and then you narrow it down into materials or solution that works. Just to bring this back, then you come up with a solution or product or service that solves the problem. There is a way for you to determine how new your solution is. And this is critical because every company has got different names for the experiment. You call it proof of concept, you call it the pilot, you call it whatever in your corporation. How many failures did you have before you land up with your solution? So if you tested 2 things, chances are you probably have some idea already. For example, if you just want to try Zoom and Google Meet, you try those 2 things and you decide Google Meet is better. You probably have a fairly good idea already what your solution is going to be. But if you go back a little bit, if you do this test and you try 5, 6 different things before you come up with the one solution, you're probably trying something somewhat new. But if you go all the way back, you should have 10 or 20 experiments that you try. What does this look like in the real world? So I'm making this example up. Say you were trying to be sustainable. You are an automotive maintenance company. You provide products and services for people who love their cars. And in one of your stations, you have this disposable oil station. And the only thing you're testing, and you're trying, okay, let's put it over here, let's put it over there, this location close to the convenience store, and you have your solution, right? That's just one solution. But if you step back a little bit and you say, hey, there are different ways to be sustainable in the user journey, right? One of them is to let your users dispose of your product and service. The other could be that you notice that people who actually change their oil, maybe they are not professionals. Maybe every time they change, they spill so much oil. One of the ways you could do is maybe just run a professional workshop so that if you do it right, you can reduce the oil spill or waste by 20% or 10%. Or the other way could be you notice that your bottle makes it very difficult for your users to pour an exact amount. You could have a very transparent bottle, and the user could see, oh, it says 20 millimeters. So like, how do you get 20 millimeters? How do you know, right? And this way, you also reduce waste. But what I'm trying to do is you step back, and instead of saying, I want to put a waste basket there, you step back a little bit and say, hey, look, are there different ways to solve the problem? Because the problem you're trying to solve is, how do I help the users reduce waste? And these are some of the 3 ways. And you can imagine, if you go back further and further, you should have more product and services and more possibility. And I'll show you some of it just now. This is critical because what I showed you just now, solution on the right-hand side here is probably, you're not the only one who does this solution. Other people have already done it, probably. That's why you want to try and do it too. If I were to go back, this is kind of like you taking a trip. If you take a trip to Bangkok, and I've been very consistent from the left on the right here. If you're on the left-hand side here, I live here in Bangkok. I know, hopefully, I know the city very well. I know where to go, I know what to do, I know which mall to go to, right? It's kind of like, if I wanted to try something, I'm not going to do something very different because I think I know what I'm talking about. This is, from a business standpoint, this is like your core business. You kind of know this is the area you want to improve on. This is a solution you want to test because you know you have to do it. You know what the outcome is going to be, right? But because I'm familiar with Bangkok, I know what I'm doing. Coincidentally, I live here. You would hope that I'm an expert in this area. I've only been to Japan once. If I were to try something that is new for me, but not new for the world, it's like going to Japan, right? I can do research. I can check out, ask my friends and colleagues, oh, okay, I'm going to Japan. What do you suggest? What do you recommend? Right? It's lower risk, but then it's probably very familiar to, not to me, but to other people. You can find out more. You guys know where I'm going with this, right? If we're going into space where no man has gone before, nobody knows what's going to happen. And I use this example very intentionally, right? And just to give you some example, okay? From the left to right, some of you may be familiar with blue ocean strategy. It's basically if you're looking for something completely new, you're on the far left of the chart there. If you're on this side, you're in an area where you've been doing this for decades. Your company have been doing this for years. You're very familiar with Bangkok and wherever you're from, right? But if you're looking on the left, it's something completely new. And that's why I want to focus on what do you mean by new? Because if I'm to be honest, most corporations are not doing something that's truly new. Most corporates are doing something that's new for you, not for the world, which is not a bad thing. We just need to set the expectation, and I'm trying to keep myself up to speed here, right? If you were a TikToker, I'm a TikTok guy. If I take TikTok around here, right? All my friends and all my colleagues from Bangkok, they're probably going to react, oh yeah, I've been there. I've been there, I've done that. You know, it's very cheap, I'm here, I take a photo, right? But if I took a trip to Japan, maybe some of my friends have never been to Japan. They get excited and say, oh yeah, cool, 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 right? And maybe people share, and then I have a lot of visibility. But if I were to go to space, whoa, what are the chances that people are going to share, oh, look at this guy, he's in space. No one has been there before. But you know what the question is? Am I going to get back home? This is the risk, right? If you go to space, nobody has been there before, and I think we don't understand this. That's why I think it's very important when we talk about innovation, when we talk about sustainability, when we talk about something new. New for us and not new for us is very different, and we'll dive a little bit down. And this is where leadership and management comes in. And for my colleagues who are Thai, I'm going to say something that is going to be brutal, but I would love your feedback. Over the past 20 years or so, you would see in the Western media a lot of use of words like leadership and management, right? But in Thailand, for some reason, when you look at the news, when people talk about people up top, we should talk a lot about Pu Borihan, which is management. It sounds weird to me when you hear Punam, which is leaders. It's still not in our culture, and I don't know why, but that's just my observation as a Thai. You know, we don't say Punam, and we don't value leadership as much as management or Pu Borihan. So, I'm just going to simplify left and right, Bangkok and space. You're going to be familiar with this. It's the balance between solvable expertise and experience. Bangkok, or wherever you're from, you've been around, you've done this, you know people who knows what to do, what needs to be done. On the right-hand side is something that is unpredictable and complex. Nobody has any experience in it, right? So if you're a corporation, you know what I'm talking about. You have best practices, right? Follow all these steps and you'll be okay. But if you're looking at a complex solution, there is no guarantee things are going to be okay. The only thing you can do is prepare for the worst, because no one can tell you what's going to happen, right? I'm going to give you this video now. The sound's not coming through, but that's okay. What he's talking about is he's comparing any business to a fortress. Fortress is your core business. There's a group of people who does what you do better. Make your core business stronger and better and faster. Fortify the fortress. And there are groups of people who gets on a ship, I think back in the days, to the sea, to try and find out what's the next big thing. How do we discover the new business line, a new product, the most sustainable way, so that we can all be and our kids can be alive, right? But he gives a very good comparison. Back in the days, if you were European, looking to discover America, you send out in a castle, fortress, you have people who continue to build the castle and strengthen it, and then you send out the chips to find out. You know what the challenge is? We're going to come back to that. The challenge is trying to find a balance between leadership and management. Most organizations are underled and overmanaged. And by this, I mean we are using methodology to run management with areas where we need leadership. What does that look like? It looks a little bit like this. Back in the days, if you're sending a ship over, what can you do? You can't do much. All you can do is, here's the captain, here's the crew, here are the experts, here's the food, here's some gold, right? You can tell them, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, don't violate this, don't violate that. But guess what? When the ship sets sail, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you told them, because they're out in the middle of the sea. There is a physical barrier between management and leadership. Leadership is in the ship. It's the captain. It's the people who are on board. They're the one who's going to see the situation. They're the one who's going to react. Honestly, they don't care what people back at the fortress say because you don't have context. This makes it very challenging. You know what this is? Digital. It has never been easier to micromanage. You know how easy it is for a leader to say, hey, you guys, if I were to do the same thing and say, hey, you guys, here's your ship, here's your resource, go do what you do best. It's so difficult because we want to know, right? We want to follow up with the team, hey, can you have a Zoom call with me tonight? I just want to see how you're doing. It takes real leadership to let the team go and say, hey, I empower you to do what you do best. I'm going to be hands-off a little bit so we can discover newer products and services. Now I'm going to touch a little bit now on collaboration. You guys know this better than me, right? Everybody declares net zero. Very few people say, I want to do carbon neutral. And we know why, right? Very simply put, if we elect to do net zero, we're doing scope 1, 2, and 3. If we're doing scope 3, you know this better than me, you can't do it alone. You have no choice but to do upstream and downstream activity. You have no choice but to collaborate, right? The next section, I'm going to try and give you an example of what it looks like when we try to put everything together, right? And we're going to touch on these two things, the TV and the bed, and you'll understand why in a little bit. But first, I want to get a show of hands, maybe just in the interest of time. I don't think we will do the Slido. I just want to get, if you could put up your hands. How many of you think that if you start a project, you have to be able to put a return on investment? People will say, yes, we must. Yeah? People will say, no. Or the rest of you, I'm saying, not sure. Right? And that's okay. You know, and I'll show you a case. And by the way, this is just an object where, unknown object. My prompt to the AI was a couple of business people trying to evaluate value. So here's the thing I'm going to say, right? To be able to evaluate ROI of something, you have to know its value. Anybody don't agree with me? If you're shy, we can talk to it later. But I'm assuming that if you don't know the value, I think we can go back to the slide. Thank you. If you don't know the value of something, you found some new material, how are you going to know? Will you invest if it's worth $1 versus 10,000? So you have to know how much it's worth to be able to determine ROI, right? Okay. I think the previous speaker spoke about Netflix, and I told him that I'm going to talk a little bit about Netflix as well. Netflix is a very successful company, and when you look back in time, we're always 2020. It's very easy to look back and say, hey, yeah, it's so obvious, right? Of course, it's going to happen. I'm going to give you a timeline, right? This is a timeline. So Netflix started streaming for free in 2007. That's almost 20 years ago, okay? 2007. Just to remind us how long ago that was. In 2007, we have this little thing, if you're familiar. The resolution for streaming was 480p. To give you context, that time, the competing physical media, Blu-ray, was 1080p. The iPhone 1 was launched in 2007. It wasn't even called the iPhone 1, it was called the iPhone. Right? Fast forward to today. We're talking about 4K. Some of us familiar with 8K. So that's how much we're stepping back in time, right? We're talking about upcoming iPhone 17 now. Just to give you some idea, because I think when you talk about Netflix, people look back and say, hey, it's obvious. It's not. Netflix started with DVD, if you're familiar with history, right? These are some of the questions that Netflix, and I'll go as far as to say Netflix, Disney, all the movie companies, none of them knew what the ROI was. And the reason I say this is because if you're Netflix and you're giving rental to a DVD, it's very easy to put value to it. It's a physical media. I have 10 DVDs. Sony, I'm going to give you 5% of the 10 DVDs. I know exactly who has got these 10 DVDs, right? So I can calculate the ROI very easily. So should we do the same with digital? I mean, digital, you can have infinite number of people watching it. What's the value going from DVD to streaming? How much do you pay Paramount Pictures? And if you were Paramount, how much should Netflix pay us? How many users want to watch 480p when everything else is 1080p? How should we charge the users? By the newness of the movie? By the resolution? Some of these answers, I don't think we even have access. Only Netflix knows. Only Sony knows what the answer is. And I'll tell you why I say nobody knew. If you look at the timeline, Netflix, after 4 years, they saw the value in streaming. And the reason I say that is because that was when they decided to, anybody heard of Quickster? No? It was a company that Netflix split out to handle DVD when they were pretty sure streaming was the next big thing. It took them 4 years. How long did it take the rest of the industry to realize what the ROI of streaming is? I don't have the details. I'm doing some guesswork. But if you look at the details here, Disney got their rights back to all their movies in 2019. So it looks to me, my guess, in between these 10 years or so, everybody else realized what the ROI was. And I'm saying this because if they knew what the ROI was from the beginning, they wouldn't have given Netflix the right to stream, right? So here's the thing. When you try something new, you cannot determine what the ROI is going to be. The only reason Netflix was able to determine the ROI was they experimented and get that data themselves. If you're the first to do streaming, who are you going to ask? Oh, guys, streaming, what's that? It doesn't exist yet. So, the difference between doing management and doing leadership. Leadership needs to be more comfortable with ambiguity. And so many of us say we are, but we are not, because we keep asking for ROI, right? Truly new ideas need time to grow, and you can't rush that. You can't rush the process. And I want to touch some example now, and somebody, the speaker earlier said, incidentally, I've never seen her slide before, and she said, it's a balance between profit and sustainability. And I'll give you an example where very clearly we have to be visible and we have to decide what are we going to do as an organization. So I'm now going to show you something that's pretty contentious, more contentious than I've been, I guess. This is a view that is very corporate-centric. What we mean by this is it's a supply-side view. What I mean by this is we are a company. Look at our product and services. Great product, great services, very sustainable. Users should want it. The other view is the demand side. And I'll show you. Here is the supply side. We build good things. Right? We're pushing the product and we are saying, hey, customers should want this. The other end is the customer who is looking at this and say, why should I want your product? What's my reason for buying your product? And there's a gentleman, his name is Bob Meister. He talks a lot about this. Gives you a very different perspective. And I'll share just a slice of what he talks about. The customer is not going to make a decision to purchase unless you can get the customers to overstep this wall. And I'll show you some of the factors, forces that make you decide, one way or the other. So, we don't like change. We don't like change. Typically, the best thing to do is to stay where we are. We've been using this car, we've been using this product for a long time now. The red zone is the business as usual area. We don't want to change, right? You have a new product. You're trying to ask the customers to make a decision. And there are 4 forces at play, normally. Either Jane Doe or Jack Chris or Kevin or Nicole, or you're stuck in the middle. There's all these companies and all these factors trying to push you to do something. 2 factors make you decide, will push you towards making the change. One of them I already mentioned. You have a pain, you have a problem. You're looking for a solution to come and help you overcome some problem. That might push you towards acquiring something new. There's something new that's out, the latest and greatest iPhone. Something new technology or solution, that's going to push you a little bit to the right and maybe towards a new behavior. But things are not so simple. There are 2 forces that stop you. And I don't think any of you are going to be surprised by this. They're very logical. Anxiety of a new solution. How do you know it's going to work? Right? I mean, I'm okay right now where I am. If I use this new thing, maybe it won't work. Right? And the thing is, I just basically mentioned, so it's a tag of balance between how do I know the new solution is going to work for me versus why don't I just stay where I am right now? Things are good. Right? And I'll give you an example, just to clear. This is somewhat based on my personal experience, right? The bed. How many of you have thought about buying a new bed? So maybe one of the pain points that I took, I get married, I get up early, and I wake up my wife because I get up and I'm a heavy guy, My wife, oh man, you wake up, and every time you wake up, so maybe I need to find a better bed. That don't wake up my wife. That might be something, right? And then I hear about memory foam bed. These new beds that are like so stable, you can get up. I think the advert said you can get up and you won't spill any drinks. Okay, maybe that will help solve my problem. But then I think, oh man, beds are like really expensive. They cost thousands of dollars, right? How do I know? What if I buy this memory foam bed and it doesn't work? Next one is, what do I do with the old bed? So if you can imagine, right, these forces, get a new bed and maybe risk it doesn't work. Oh, maybe it's not too bad. After I decide to try and find, oh man, such hard work, maybe I just stay with the way it is right now. We have a choice, basically, and I just simplify by dividing. There's a couple of things we can do. We can help the people, the customers, make their decision that way, buy new things. Or you can make them recycle and remain, continue to use their product. One could be, I realize that, okay, look, normally my wife get up before me. It's only this week that I'm getting up before her. It could be as simple as that. It could be, I realize, oh man, I'm getting old now. Maybe it is time to get a new bed. By the way, Tempur-Pedic also help your back pain. That might push you a little bit towards that direction, right? You see the advert, I think this is from Tempur-Pedic, and says, hey, you can jump around in your bed and the wine will be okay. That will push the customers a little bit towards this direction. Or maybe you have the separate bed, right? And then when I get up, my wife is fine. Everything is going to push you in that direction. Now, from a sustainable standpoint, you really need to think, okay, look, do we want people to start buying a new bed all the time? Maybe, maybe not. right? So I got this inspiration. So, you know, you've all been to hotels. I don't know if they have it here. A pillow menu where you can try all sorts of different pillows. Oh, I didn't know there were this many kind of pillows. Maybe if you're a bed manufacturing company and you've never collaborated with a hotel before, maybe you ought to collaborate with them and say, hey, if you stay at our hotel, you can try all different kind of beds, different kind of Tempur-Pedic for 2 nights, 1 night, so you can check whether or not it works, right? Maybe if you've never collaborated with a logistic company, if you buy a bed from us, we'll move your bed for you, right? Or you could look at rental or second-hand bed, in which another question would come and say, hey, how do I know it's clean? Right? And maybe you want to work with Dettol, or you want to work with hotels, because I'm assuming hotels know how to clean their beds every day, right? To decide, okay, look, is this something we can work together if you were a bed manufacturing company? Or you can work with a website that maybe helps you list certified second-hand bed, or do trade-ins. So I'm not an expert in beds, okay? These are some of the real thought process that I went through, that your users and your customers go through before they decide, oh, why should we pick your product? A decision for a corporation is, if you want to push that way, you're going to realize that, okay, maybe we sell more stuff, we have more margin, but then we're generating more and more beds, right? But if we want to try and do this way, what's the business model? How do we generate revenue? You know, maybe the beds can go somewhere, we don't know where, you know? And I want you to notice something. I'm throwing you a lot of questions with 0 answers. And that's intentional, okay? At the end of the day, when you look at things like this, you have a lot of possible solutions, and you have to make a decision. What is your corporate priority? Is it profitability? Maybe a little less margin, but then we become more sustainable. The last thing that I will tell you is on this side of management. There are lots of answers because it's your core business. You do this for decades. You ask a question, you should have an answer. And this side, I'm sorry, it's going to be like what I just told you. There are going to be a lot of questions with no answers. Having a lot of questions that you can't answer is actually a good sign that you're actually trying something really new, because that means no one has done it, right? I think this is a struggle. How do you get comfortable with people asking a lot of questions with no answers? So I hope I've given you something to think about. We've clarified what we mean by new. If you're really expecting, the challenge that I have is sometimes we invest like we are going to Japan, but we expect results like we are going to the moon. It's not practical, it's not wrong, but it's impractical and impossible. That's why before you try something, new for who is a good starting point for us to clarify. And leadership and management is something also that we need to clarify on, And obviously you can't do this alone. At the end of the day, I kind of picked this picture and thought, it looks too nice. If you're trying to do something new, some new business model that's really sustainable, that's going to save us, I can tell you the journey is not going to be smooth and sunny like this, and it's going to look rough. But if you're in the right crowd with the right group of people who wants to do the same thing, I think it's going to be a very beautiful journey. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Jankris. Jankris, as always, a pleasure to see you on stage. Here, once again, are some questions for your great takeaways for today. Yeah. Great sharing. So far, the one that we actually have is advice you'll give leaders who feel kind of stuck in the old business models. Can we have the microphone for speaker, please?
I think that there are two, I'm going to answer this in two ways. So if you have no drive to create a new business model, and that's okay. I found leaders who, honestly, there is no mandate for me to try something new because people pay me to be stable right now. You know, basically there's no sense of urgency. I'm going to retire in 3 years. You know, I just want to make sure that I don't break anything, right? So, and that's okay, but I think the tough thing is to say, that's what I'm doing, because it's not a good thing to say, right? But if you do decide to try and do a business model, I always say, you know, look, start small. And I was just having a conversation with a lot of people and said, look, if you want to try a new business model, don't start with finance, for example. You know, you want to start doing something that, you know, you feel is a little bit controllable, and an area where, you know, if something does go wrong, it's not going to be the end of the world. You know, so, yeah.
Always does. Thank you. You just came in again. The new S curve from your own personal experience.
I can spend a whole day talking to you about this. So it's everybody, and it's going to sound so cliche. I'm going to say it's everybody who has a problem. I once talked to a company who does plastic bags, you know, and their take was innovation should come from R&D and marketing. And I'm like, okay, look, I don't agree, because one of the things you can do you guys know, have any of you guys heard of PillPack, the company, PillPack? What they do is they do pre-packaged medication. So if you're like me, you have a lot of medication that you need to take, right? People forget what they need to take, so they just pack it into but it's just a plastic bag. So I told this person, I said, look, the person who's going to make this innovation could be anybody. If I have an elderly person at home who nearly ate the wrong medication because the marking is unclear, I might want to start doing this packaging thing. You know, it's not going to come from R&D, it's not going to come from marketing, but it's going to come from my own personal experience, the pain point that I've seen. So I think this is one of the challenges, like, how do you make it so that everybody can, bring up new ideas, because they've seen in the real world, this is where people are experiencing problems and challenges, not just from the executive or marketing or R&D.
Very good food for thought. Thank you so much once again, Jack.